FPL Game Week 21 top transfer targets. Yes, there is FA Cup, but in today's video, with the deadline now being just a few days away, we're going to take a look at some of the best players you should be considering buying into your FPL team going into Game Week 21. We're going to discuss some of those players you might be considering selling. Are João Pedro and Alexander Isak actually injured? Should you be moving the money out of Trent Alexander-Arnold after that performance last weekend and the fact that Connor Bradley is back? Or should you be looking to buy players like Lewis Hall? Which is the best midfielder? Is Anthony Gordon essential from Newcastle? Or could cheaper options in the likes of Ismail Assar, Ahmad of Manchester United, or even Murphy, also at Newcastle, be cover for him? What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here. And before I see it in the comments, you may notice I'm trialing something a little bit different in terms of my setup. You may prefer it, you may not prefer it, you may also, majority of you, not have a preference at all, where I have my sort of mic set up in shot. I've never really done it, but I know a lot of people across YouTube do it. And sometimes it makes it look more professional. Sometimes it makes it look like it's in the way. 90% of the time, I don't think it particularly matters. But I would just be interested. It feels weird recording with it right there because normally further away, like out of shot, still picking it up. But I just wonder if it make the audio quality slightly better because it's really close to me. But anyway, let me know what you think as you go through the video. If you prefer it, if you don't prefer it, it may stay just one video. Let's see if you get it. You might get it in some videos. And anyway, let's dive in. What we're going to do is look at best players to buy. Before we do that, we're going to discuss two big bits of injury updates, and that is between João Pedro and Alexander Isak, both of which are very unlikely to feature, well, almost guaranteed to not feature in the FA Cup this weekend. João Pedro apparently twisted his ankle in training this week, probably on a Thursday, I think is when we got the Brighton press conference. That evening, he did actually post a picture of him on training with a caption or just like an audio over it, looking absolutely fine. So I'm not particularly worried about João Pedro. Alexander Isak also went off after 60 minutes in the EFL Cup midweek with a potential hamstring tightness. Again, we're not guaranteed that he's going to be back available for Wolves at home. He isn't going to play any part in the FA Cup this weekend. Do I think these two are going to be available? Probably. It feels like an international break injury. It feels like a sort of excuse so that the managers don't get questioned about not playing arguably their best players in the FA Cup this weekend, because there's always talk about whether managers take it seriously. Is it a competition that the top team should still be? Well, the FA Cup should always have the top teams available in, but are the top teams rotating too much? Are they taking it seriously and stuff like that? Now, the only thing with the João Pedro one is apparently he has an MRI scan on that. Now, Alexander Isak, it sounds like they're just giving him some rest. He'll report back on Monday for training and they don't play until Wednesday. Good thing on João Pedro is they don't play until Thursday. That's a good thing and a bad thing because it means we almost certainly won't get a Brighton press conference before the FPL deadline. So the FPL deadline is, of course, on Tuesday. And because they play on Thursday, the press conference should be on Wednesday. Now, we don't have that confirmed at the moment, but it means we probably won't get a big update on João Pedro. Personally, I think they will both play. Personally, I think it's an excuse for both not to have to play in the FA Cup. But it's something to keep an eye on. A, if looking to buy either of these week, or B, like me, if you own them. I own both, and I'm not that worried about it. Maybe I should be slightly worried because I have both of them. If you own just one, it's definitely not something to worry about. Now diving into the main part of the video, all the data, all the fixture tickets and everything is taken from the Fantasy Football Scout Memories area. So if you want to go and do your own fixture ratings, if you want to compare players, if you want to have a look at the underlying data that we build, the tables and the players in these videos, go and check it out. They're still offering discounts throughout the season if you use the link in the description as well. What we're going to start off with, as we are doing now with these nice new graphics that I kindly have made for me, is the best and worst fixtures that we've now got over the next 6 weeks. Really interestingly, that Manchester City now have the worst run of fixtures over the next 6 weeks. So although Erling Haaland might be tempting based off returns in the past couple of games, I don't think now is particularly the time to go and buy him. The next couple are actually not bad from an attacking point of view of Brentford away and Ipswich away, but after that, Chelsea, Arsenal, Newcastle and Liverpool, arguably four of the most informed teams in the league at the moment, probably excluding Nottingham Forest. So I won't be looking at Manchester City. Also low down the list, if you own the likes of Semenyo, although he might be playing up front now with injuries to Evan Nilsson and Unal, who both, very unfortunately for Bournemouth, look like they've picked up an injury at the same time. If you've got Wolves, if you've got Matej Cunha, he's not that appealing because of the fixtures. He might be slightly further down the line. Now, once we go back up to the top of the ticker, Crystal Palace, Manchester United, Arsenal, Newcastle, Brighton and Fulham are the teams in the top 6 of the ticker, and they are the teams that we are generally looking to invest in at the moment. We will talk about the likes of Eze, the likes of Ismail Assar, the likes of Mateta, the likes of Munoz. We'll talk about Ahmad and Bruno Fernandes in this video. We will discuss a little bit of what to do with Arsenal, because generally they've not actually been that good over the past couple of weeks. They've been dropping points, they've been conceding goals and not been scoring goals quite as fluidly as you'd want them to. Now, generally, they are a better team at home than they are away from home, particularly defensively. I think they have 4 clean sheets on the bounce at home, Arsenal. Spurs at home, Villa at home, City at home and West Ham at home, with away trips to Wolves and Leicester. Generally, Gabriel is still not a sell. If you own Saliba or Timber and you want to downgrade them, I probably would. David Raya, again, there's no real goalkeepers that I really love at the moment, so unless you need the money, I would probably keep them. Looking at the attack from Arsenal, if you've got an Odegaard or a Martinelli, they're a keep because Spurs concede an awful lot of chances. I wouldn't be moving them out, particularly at the moment, unless you want to move to one man, and that is probably Anthony Gordon or maybe Bruno Fernandes. We'll talk about those two slightly further down the video, but I'm not sure I'd really be looking to sell Odegaard or Martinelli at the moment. Newcastle we'll talk about. Brighton, it's mainly João Pedro, the only one that you're really looking at. Defensively, they're not keeping enough clean sheets. And Fulham, there's a lot of investment in there already. And Raul Jimenez, of course, doing well recently. And then we're having a look at the best and worst attacks and defenses in the league. And we've updated this graphic very slightly. So now in terms of the XG data, you've got them sort of color-coded by big improvements and sort of big decreases in terms of underlying data. If there's no color, it's because, or it's just the gray box in the last 6 data, it's just because there's not been a significant change. So if the data's gone up by 0.1 or down by 0.1 or less, I haven't color-coded it. Otherwise, it would have just become too much. You can start to see big improvements in terms of attack. We've got Liverpool and we've got Newcastle. Big improvements in terms of defense. Newcastle, Arsenal continue to get better. Brentford and Wolves actually improving their defensive data alongside Leicester, although still not that good over the past sort of 6 weeks and over the season as well. As we see, in terms of attacking data, Chelsea slightly dropped off. Manchester City also slightly dropped off despite those past 2 games. Newcastle and Liverpool are the best attacks in the league over the past 6 game weeks, and they are right up there over the course of the season. You should be owning Mo Salah. You should, of course, be owning Alexander Isak if he's fit and available, but Anthony Gordon, Jacob Murphy should absolutely be on radar alongside the likes of Gakpo. When we look at the defense, Lewis Hall should be right up there. There's a big comparison at the moment between Lewis Hall, between Anthony Robinson, and between Munoz as well. Looking at this data, for the next 4 weeks, you'd have to say that Lewis Hall is the best out of them. Now, someone like a Munoz has better long-term fixtures, so if you were looking at that, then maybe Munoz goes top. Fulham also quite high up in terms of the defensive data as well. But over the next 5, Newcastle, Lewis Hall, Gordon, Murphy, Isak have got to be top priorities for us. So before we get into the actual part of this video, which is having a look at the best players to buy, we're going to have a look at should you be selling some of these key players. We're going to start off at Liverpool. So although they are the best attack in the league and improving, defensively they're still pretty good as well. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Luis Diaz are making owners quite frustrated. Trent Alexander-Arnold, of course, not doing very well in that fixture against Man United, getting run around by a left wing-back Diego Dallo and Bruno Fernandes. And then, of course, we see Conor Bradley come on for him. He also starts in the Cup during the week as well. Prediction is that Conor Bradley will start the FA Cup fixture this weekend, which should put Trent Alexander-Arnold back in line to start in the Premier League away at Nottingham Forest. What I would say on Trent is he is so key to the system that Liverpool are playing at the moment. You saw it during the week when they played against Spurs. They are just a completely different team when Trent is in it versus when he's not. I personally think, initially I was a bit worried, but I think there's a bit of an overreaction for Trent. Now, if you don't own him, would I go and buy him? Probably not at the moment. But if you own him, with the potential double that we've spoken about in the chip strategy video earlier on in the week, either coming in game week 24 or 25, I just don't think you can be going and selling Trent Alexander-Arnold at the moment. Luis Diaz is a slightly different prospect because they do have the likes of Diogo Jota back. He did only play 59 minutes, and with the amount of fixtures they've got piling up, it is again a little bit of a concern. Now, I would keep my eye out for the lineup that we get going into the weekend. For example, if Luis Diaz starts alongside Jota, you might be okay. Gakpo does look pretty nailed. If Luis Diaz starts with Darwin, for example, I would be pretty concerned because that would mean to me that maybe Gakpo and Jota are going to be the two that do start in a pretty big fixture away at Nottingham Forest. I don't think he's a priority sell, but I'd be keeping my eye on the minutes he plays in the FA Cup this weekend. Next up is going to be Jackson of Chelsea. Now, Jackson has been one of the biggest underperformers in terms of underlying data. The fixtures have been good. The fixtures remain really good. Bournemouth, Wolves, City, West Ham, and City are just not a defence that we should be fearing at the moment in the next four. The only reason to be selling Jackson is if you need the money, but a lot of us need the money. For example, in my team, I could do Jackson down to a Mateta, down to a Chris Wood, down to a Visa, down to a Raul Jimenez, and afford doing Enzo Fernandez out of my team up to someone like a Brian Mbeumo, a Gordon, or an Eze, for example, in my team. I don't think this is massively the week to go and sell him because some of the really good forwards that we look at in the likes of Chris Wood being the big one does play against Liverpool this week. But I understand he's been frustrating, but I don't think at the moment this is the week to sell him. But let's see how the FA Cup goes and if the injuries to Isak or João Pedro potentially change my thinking. Final one is going to be Brian Mbeumo, and City at home this week is just not a fixture to fear. Crystal Palace away in game week 23 starts a pretty nice run of fixtures for Brian Mbeumo. So despite two red fixtures on paper in the next two, Brian Mbeumo for me is a definite hold. Even if you don't own Gordon, even if you don't own Bruno Fernandes, I would be holding on to Brian Mbeumo and looking to add one of those two on top of him, but not as a replacement. So then we're going to start off by having a look at defenders. Now, the cheap bracket, there are a lot of options, none of which I particularly like. Castagna and Anderson of Fulham are the two that I really like. Both actually scored in the Cup during the week as well. I still would go with Castagna for his attacking threat. West Ham away, Leicester away, and Man United at home in the next three is still a pretty nice run. Now, just to run through a few of the other cheaper ones, which I know you are asking about. Mazraoui I like this week. The fixtures are not bad, 4.4, but I still don't trust Manchester United defensively really to go and buy them. Chalobah and Mark Guéhi at Crystal Palace are both linked to a move to Chelsea during this window. Chalobah is of course on loan and Chelsea do have a sort of recall clause. Mark Guéhi is being linked to Chelsea for about 40 million as well. It makes it a little bit difficult to buy either of them in case we don't know what club they're going to be at. And also if one of them goes, it does make the defence weaker in general if they lose either of the two and the other one does stay. Mykolenko at Everton, they have just sacked Sean Dyche. We don't fully know if he's going to be in the new manager system, which sounds like it's going to be David Moyes. There's also a slight bit of link for Everton to a new left back in the January transfer window. I don't think that's going to happen because they need attacking players way more than they need defensive players, but I'm not sure I'd be going and buying Mykolenko based on we don't know the manager, we don't know if he's definitely going to be playing, and we don't know how good defensively they're going to be either. Williams at Nottingham Forest I quite like. He looks like he's nailed down that left back spot over Alex Moreno now. He is just 4.3, a much cheaper way into that defence over someone like a Murillo and Milenkovic or an Olorayina, but he does come with more risk that Alex Moreno could come back in at some point. And of course, they do play Liverpool this week. Botman back for Newcastle alongside Dan Burn. We don't actually know if it's going to be Botman, Schär, Burn, which two of those are going to play at centre-back. The prediction is that it'll be Botman and Schär, but that doesn't mean that because of Botman's injury, there might be a bit of rotation. So I probably wouldn't be buying him either. Konza, Aston Villa defensively just continue to concern me. Van Heck exactly the same. And Howson of Bournemouth, their fixtures are not good enough going forward. So there are a lot of good cheap or okay cheap options, none of which I particularly like buying. My favourite bracket at the moment is definitely that mid-priced option. And to be honest, I don't think there's any defender outside of about 4.7 and 5.2 that I'd be looking to buy at the moment. So if we actually include the slightly more expensive ones as well, Konate is great. And if I was buying a Liverpool defender now, Konate would be the one I would go to. Didn't play any minutes during the week as well. I don't expect him to start in the cup game over the weekend as well, which means he should be fully rested going into that Nottingham Forest Brentford away fixture. I still like Gabriel, he's still the best of the Arsenal defenders, but with the potential double for Liverpool coming up, I prefer Konate. And then you've got Olorayina. Now, Liverpool at home this week, with Neco Williams potentially being a good option at a cheaper price. I don't love buying him at the moment, particularly with Liverpool this week, but I continue to not own a Forest defender and they continue to ruin me. But generally, if you're looking to buy a defender this week, it's either Konate if you want Liverpool. If not, it's probably Lewis Hall or Munoz of Crystal Palace. Now, As we spoke about in the chip strategy video, Lewis Hall and Munoz both might blank in game week 29. Now, whether that impacts your thinking or not, I don't quite know. Robinson does play Spurs, and Spurs are still in the cup. The prediction is, even though they won the first leg, that Liverpool will win at home to Anfield and knock Spurs out. All three of these do have a slight risk of blanking in game week 29 if that impacts you. Munoz has great fixtures all the way between now and game week 29. Lewis Hall is better for the next 4, but worse over the long term. I just think with the Newcastle form, Lewis Hall should be top, Munoz second. Robinson is third, but I would still just save the money and buy Castagna. Again, we saw in the cup midweek, he does have that goal threat. I also like Konate. I also like Ola Aina as well. Next up, we're going to have a look at some of the midfielders you are all considering buying. So we've got probably the 9 best midfielders that I think you're considering buying at the moment. Anthony Gordon and Jacob Murphy. We've got Eze and Sarr. We've got Brian and Burma, who've already spoken about. Savio, Gibbs White. And then the Manchester United in Bruno Fernandes and Ahmad. We've also got, so far this season, their points per 90 and their expected goal involvements per 90. Now, you do need to add a little bit of a caveat because of the minutes that we're playing, right? So, for example, if you compare Gordon and you compare Jacob Murphy, Murphy's points per 90 is actually higher than Gordon's. But Gordon tends to play 90 minutes most weeks, whereas Murphy is tending to be 60, 70 at the moment. I think the key comparison that we need to make to start with is between some of those players from the same team. Gordon, high XGI per 90, higher points per match, but lower points per 90. I still think I wouldn't be taking the gamble on Murphy unless you don't have the money to go to Gordon. They both offer really good value. I prefer Gordon to Murphy. I also prefer Fernandes to Ahmad. Again, the online data massively favours Bruno Fernandes. He's on some set pieces. He's on penalties as well. And I also think there's a chance that we see Garnacho come back into the Manchester United lineup. Now, that could hinder both of Fernandes or Ahmad. Neither will get dropped. But Fernandes might play in central midfield, or Ahmad might go back to wing back, which I think is the most likely scenario if Garnacho comes back in. I think Fernandes is better than Ahmad. Sarr versus Eze is the actual only scenario where I actually think that the cheaper option is the better of the two. He has higher points per 90. He has better underlying data. It's just the returns in the past couple of games for Eze that makes Eze look better. Eze's not on all set pieces when Will Hughes is in the team, although he might have an injury at the moment. Mateta also expected to be on penalties for Crystal Palace as well. So I prefer Sarr over Eze, I prefer Gordon over Murphy, and I prefer Fernandes over Ahmad. When you start to compare those more expensive ones, Fernandes versus Gordon is really close. The fixture this week makes Fernandes look nice, but I think Gordon is the best midfielder to go and buy this week. Expensive, cheap, whatever your budget, Anthony Gordon for the next 4. Wolves at home, Bournemouth at home, Southampton away, and then Fulham at home. He is just the number 1 pick. I really like Fernandes if you can get to it, but only if you've already got Gordon. Again, I really like Sarr. He's probably my favourite of the cheaper ones over an Ahmad, over a Murphy, just based off the long-term Crystal Palace fixtures. To finish off with the others, you could look at Gibbs White as an alternative to going with someone like a Chris Wood in your forward line. Personally, I don't love it. He has returned quite a lot recently, but his data's not that great. I would go with a Sarr or a Gordon over him at the moment. Savio and Mbeumo, again, we spoke about Manchester City's fixtures. I'm not certain on Savio. I think it's too late to be going and buying him. And then Brian Mbeumo. If you don't own him, you're probably not buying. As I said at the beginning of the video, don't sell Mbeumo if you own him. But let's not buy him before City and Liverpool at home. But I would really, really have a plan for that Palace away fixture, if not Spurs at home, if not the week after. So some point from game week 23 to 25, I feel like you need a plan for Brian Mbeumo. And finally, we are finishing off up front. So as a little bit of a disclaimer, the ones highlighted in green are my favourite forwards to buy at the moment. And that is Isaac, Mateta, Visa in a few weeks, João Pedro and Chris Wood. There are an awful lot of forwards that you are considering at the moment. Just to start and rule a few out for me, Delap, the fixtures are nowhere near good enough for me to go and buy him, especially when he comes in at a similar price to someone like a Raul Jimenez or someone like a João Pedro. A very similar thing to Matheus Cunha at the moment. From about game week 26, the Wolves fixtures look really nice and we can go and look at buying him back. But right now, I don't think anyone is going and investing new in Matheus Cunha. Gabriel Jesus also ruled out for me. Kai Havertz being back, him being dropped midweek. There is too much rotation. It was Odegaard, Martinelli the weekend. Then it was Jesus. There is too much going on for me at the moment in that Arsenal attack for me to not to want to go and buy Gabriel Jesus. And the other one I probably rule out at the moment is Dominic Solanke. Now, it's close. He does go away to Arsenal and away to Everton in the next 2. Will Everton have a new manager bounce? Quite how they'll look? Will they still be good defensively? And just generally, I'm a bit uncertain of exactly what's going on with Spurs. And we've seen earlier on in the season, when they play lots of games, they're not nearly as good. And that is what is happening at the moment. Alexander Isak, if he is available, is head and shoulders above. The data is the best. The points per 90 is the best. If you still don't own Isak, of course, if he's yellow flagged, you might want to wait for an update, but I would keep my eye out on him. Gakpo, if they get the double, is one I'll have a look at. Right now, I probably won't be investing until game week 23 when they have Ipswich at home if I do go and buy him. We spoke about Jackson earlier on. He's not a buy, but the data is still right up there as the second best out of all the forwards that we've got in terms of underlying expected goal involvement per 90. Actual output, he's also been right up there as well. But the issue is these cheaper options in the likes of Visa, João Pedro, Jimenez and Chris Wood are just matching him. The value is not right there in Jackson at the moment. Now, would I sell him? Probably not at the moment unless you need the money for something else. But I don't think I'll be buying new. My top four, probably. I know Raul Jimenez is there. And actually Muniz went off during the week with a slight injury. And if that is a long-term injury, it might boost Jimenez a lot. But long-term fixtures, as we spoke about with Robinson, are not quite as good. I prefer buying João Pedro over Jimenez at the moment. Again, for the long-term fixtures, although there's not that much to pick between the two over the next few game weeks. Visa, I spoke about with Brentford. Visa is not one to buy now, but from game week 23, I think he'll be the best forward to buy. And I've got a plan to get him in either for João Pedro if he's injured or in place of Jackson when Jackson plays Manchester City away in game week 23, which leaves Mateta and Chris Wood. Both are fantastic buys. Chris Wood, if you own him, you are absolutely laughing. Liverpool at home this week, Southampton at home, Bournemouth away. But part of me does sit here and wonder, can Mateta, with Leicester, West Ham and Brentford in the next three, get close to, match, or even outscore Wood over that time? And the long-term fixtures between now and game week 29 are just better for Mateta. I'll talk about it in my team selection video on Sunday or Monday. If I'm faced with the choice of buying Mateta or Chris Wood at the moment, I think I'm buying Mateta, despite the slightly lower data and the massively lower actual output. I think I would just take the punt that Mateta with the better fixtures will outscore him. So Isak I really like. João Pedro if he's okay, if not Jimenez. Visa in a few weeks, and then Mateta probably just over Chris Wood. That is a long transfer targets video. There's a weekend of FA Cup action, so hopefully you've all got a little bit of time to have watched it all. I will wrap it up there. If you want to check anything out that's not included in this video, do so on the Fantasy Football Scout members area. The link is in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Anything that's not answered, drop it all in the comment section down below. As I say, we'll be back with a team selection video at some point over the next couple of days. Enjoy your weekend. No FPL until Tuesday, and then another deadline next Saturday. So thick and fast next week. Thank you for watching. 2,000 likes at the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.